In November of 2023, the Swell pod took a 10-day journey across 5 states, traveling 3,580 miles with one challenge in mind.
And that challenge was to interview 100 pleasantly rebellious humans to uncover deep truths about what it takes to create something that has never existed before, challenge the status quo, maybe even change the world.
This is the Kiln Road Trip, created and produced by the Swell pod.
In partnership with Kiln, Moterra Camper Vans, and sponsored by Taurus.
I'm Spencer McKeown.
And I'm Josh Taylor, and together we're the co-hosts of the Swell pod and your guides on the Kiln Road Trip. Follow along on the journey.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow the Swell pod on social media, and subscribe to your YouTube channel at, you guessed it, the Swell pod.
This is interview 101 of the Kiln Road Trip, and today we're at the Kiln Cabin in Sundance, Utah, talking with Kiln CEO and co-founder Arian Lewis and Kiln Creative Director and co-founder Leigh Radford. Without them and the support from Kiln, the Kiln Road Trip would not have been possible. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you enjoy.
So, I can't believe it. We're here at the Kiln Cabin in Sundance. Welcome to the Kiln Road Trip. This is kind of odd and strange and cool. Arian and Leigh, welcome.
Hey, hi.
Well, as we've done with all of our other guests, if we can get Arian and then Leigh to just introduce yourself.
Sure.
I was going to say what you do, but maybe once you've introduced yourself, we'll maybe dive into the background of what you built and why you built it.
Sure. Great. I'm Arian. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Kiln. And we've been on a 10-year journey building co-working together, from the UK to Israel to India, New York, and all the way back here to Utah, and now in 5 states around the US. We love what we do. Every day it's challenging. We're incredibly grateful for the team that we work with. We work with a lot of talented and very creative, passionate individuals. And we're grateful to be able to do it right here at the footsteps of the Rockies, in just a wonderfully beautiful place where we're fortunate enough that one of the things we love to do together is ski. And so we have a culture within Kiln where we love the outdoors, and we're grateful to be outdoors with you today.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, really cool. I'm Leigh. I'm Arian's co-founder and the chief creative officer, and certainly the design guy. So historically, I'm a designer. I've had my own design consultancy for many years. And through the medium of skiing, Arian kind of dragged me over to Utah from London. And we knew each other before, as Arian suggested, through developing co-working spaces globally. But the idea of coming over here and working on a project this far away from my London home was quite a big leap of faith. But it's proved to be a fantastic experience. We're building something quite amazing.
That's great. You'll hear on some of the other podcasts, I do plug Arian and Leigh, and definitely the British. Did you know that there's a British designer? Is that fair to say? Yeah. British designer?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yes. But let's just quickly go back to the past if we can.
I think it's a slightly even more than that.
Yeah.
A lot of the initial learnings and the sort of the DNA that came into Kiln came from what we did previously and was based out of London. So
yeah, I think that's fair to say, because Arian and I worked together for a very long time in London, and so the whole birth and essence of what we do came out of not just London but our international experience.
Yeah. Well, that is where we want to go next. Yeah. Actually, we want to know how we asked every guest, what did you find? How did you find the problem or the opportunity that you found? Take us back, because we are interested in whether it's Barclays or what you were doing and how it came to this point of building Kiln.
Sure. Well, I'll give the very brief history from my side, and then you'll see where sort of our lives merged. But I came out of college and went to work for a developer called Del Webb, and we built retirement housing or active adult housing. A little different than what you'd think of when you think of retirement, because it was more for like 55 to 65-year-olds, but lots of amenities. And the concept was you buy a community and you get a house with it. So my first 8 years was sort of in that world. And I really realized that real estate is really a function of the experience that somebody's having more than just the physical elements of what is built on the real estate. And I went to school. I left my work in Las Vegas, moved to England, went to school there. And as part of what I was doing there, I studied co-working as a project. And I was surprised by the correlation between what I had been doing previously in co-working, because instead of buying a community and getting a house with it, you were buying a community and getting a desk with it, kind of thing. And so I thought that was really interesting. I then went on and did some other things. I did a startup called Tech Capital. And that company, so Tech Capital, we did a small public offering on the London Stock Exchange. And around that time, I got recruited by Barclays. And Barclays wanted to solve a very simple problem, which was, how do we get the organization of Barclays to work with fintech startups? How do we sort of get into a mode where we're actually working together? And because I had studied co-working, I thought, well, I think maybe if we create a co-working space where the startups and the bankers could sort of collide and get together, that would probably work. And so I pitched that idea, and that is where Leigh and I met, because I found a brand in London that was really the premier brand building co-working in London at that time. They were the most innovative, coolest, most interesting group. They were called Central Working. And behind Central Working was this guy named Leigh, who had created most of the designs for Central Working, along with a few other great people that we got to know along the way. And so that's how we met. And that was back in 2013.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, pretty cool. I'm a designer, and I'd had my own design consultancy in London for a very long time. It was 20 plus years ago. That design agency was all about designing restaurants, exhibitions, retail, specifically working in hospitality. I kind of definitely had a specialism in working in hospitality. And I'd won quite some time ago a design competition, a big one of the biggest ones in the UK, the Restaurant Bar Design Awards, for a project I'd done. And a couple of guys who'd seen that picked it up and said, "Hey, we're looking at doing this co-working sort of thing. We want to basically put an office on the UK high street." You might know what that means more than here. And it was a combination of, in essence, how people started to work in a Starbucks, and also how people were kind of operating in, say, a first-class business lounge in an airport. And it was a new concept. No one had really done it before. There were no real examples of how that worked.
This is pre-WeWork.
Yeah.
Okay. This is before co-working got its reputation or name.
Yeah, there wasn't really a name for co-working. Didn't really have a name. We got this unusual space. It was the only one anyone would give us, which was a hotel lobby in Bloomsbury in central London, in a kind of boutique, funky hotel. And we turned it into a workspace. And it worked. And then we did another one, and then we kept building them bigger and bigger and iterating on it. Initially, it was kind of like a version of a coffee shop, and then it turned it into a coffee shop with extra rooms in that you could use, and then it became more about the rooms and less about the coffee shop. And so we over maybe a 10 or 12 year period developed this brand up to something that perhaps resembles it more like what we do now in Kiln, and more of what people perceive as co-working. And to Arian's point, we met whilst I was on that journey. Arian was on his journey, and we collided via Barclays and Rise to create something pretty special and unique in itself.
Yeah. And there are other people that participated in that journey that
of course
have added meaningful kind of contributions to what Rise is now. What Rise is and what Kiln is, I should say. There were some real visionary people that were part of Central Working that really informed what we did. But that's how we met.
That's great. So do we want to know a little bit about just that moment of what what triggered moving away from Barclays and doing Kiln? Just briefly, I suppose.
Yeah. Just so we had been doing this for 5 years. And to be fair, Leigh and I, we worked together, but we weren't like besties or mates. We weren't like, we had respect for one another. I had a lot of respect for what
I think that's true. I always had a lot of respect for Arian. I didn't always agree with his comments when he came in. And
still does.
But I and Arian, we love dialogue. Dialogue is a great thing.
Right.
So, when you do something like build a co-working brand across multiple continents, which is what we did, you do have a real, unique set of experiences that you can draw from. Because I've been in Cape Town, South Africa with Leigh, and I've been in, Tel Aviv with Leigh, and Leigh has gone through the streets of Mumbai to find brick jolly that he could use in the location we built in Mumbai. And those experiences are pretty unique. So Barclays is a 326-year-old company, and they had multiple executive changes that went on, including the executive that I was reporting to left the organization. And as these changes were occurring, it was becoming more and more clear that things were going to be placed on hold. We had a plan to build 20 locations around the world. We had gotten through 7. We had also attempted to spin the brand off of Barclays and to turn it into a separate company. That had not succeeded, in part because it got stopped as a part of a lot of things that got stopped when the whole executive management team within the Barclays group changed or transitioned. And I was traveling 2 to 3 weeks a month at that point in time. My commute into Manhattan was an hour and 45 minutes each way. I had young kids, and the idea of moving back to Utah was becoming more appealing for a couple of different reasons. And then an opportunity presented itself within the organization that made it clear the organization was going to really pause things. Around about that time, a friend of mine came to me, and I, of course, had been thinking about and talking about maybe I should do my own kind of thing. Maybe we start something separate. And he stopped me at a birthday party, and he's like, "Arian, you really should do this." And it was just that one person hitting me with that comment just at the right time, where I felt it in my bones. And I really felt that this is what I should do. I should, it's a risky thing. I had 4 children at the time. We didn't have a ton of savings. We had some, but not a ton. It's a hard thing to just pick up your life. And we moved into a little condominium, not that little, but a condominium, in Provo. We moved across the country, and I printed out a PowerPoint deck and went out to raise capital. Needed a lot of capital, needed $6 million up front, which is a lot of capital to raise with just a PowerPoint deck. But somehow, and very fortunately, that capital got raised. I knew from the very get-go that I wanted Leigh to come on and to design the spaces. So we had been in dialogue talking about that. And then as the capital came together, which was in August of 2017, Leigh flew out in September of 2017. We went to Jackson Hole.
Oh, we had the best time ever.
I can't remember. I know why we kind of went, but there wasn't really a good business reason to go.
There was no, but I got to wear a proper cowboy hat, chaps, and a pair of leather gloves. And I put myself on my only denim shirt, and I literally felt like a full cowboy.
And we went riding, and we stayed in an old 100-year-old ranch house.
Really?
That was super cool.
Good friend of mine named Mark Turner, who's an amazing creative himself. But long story short, that's how it started. September of 2017, a trip out to Utah, and I had signed the first lease, which at that time was Kiln Salt Lake, which was an old sports bar and grill.
That's great. I knew parts of the story, but now I love that. And I love the fact that you also talked about your first job kind of the dots being connected from buying a community with a house, right? That's how you framed it.
Yeah, you buy a community and get a house with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's called Sun City, but that's the name of the brand. But
And maybe we'll come back to, what community really means to you and the vision for what you're doing now and what you'll do in the future about community. But what questions do you have?
Could you just help our audience understand, so how big is Kiln right now? How many locations or how many businesses work out of Kiln?
Yeah, we have 12 locations and we have, I think, 4,000 members currently. I can't remember how many businesses that is, but it's a lot of people.
About 1,000.
I think we're close to 1,800 different companies. Keep in mind, some of those are like a company of one person, or just one person from the company is a part of Kiln. But we have about 1,800 companies.
Yeah, and we're spread all the way from Portland, obviously, and you know the journey.
Yeah,
you guys know better than anyone, and hopefully you're
actually probably better than anyone. They really do probably know better than anyone. I've never done what you've done.
No. It's really interesting just seeing the different cultures and the different communities that have formed. Like, you go to one spot and it feels a little different, but it also feels connected. It's really interesting.
It is. It felt at home though. Like every time we arrived, whether it was 1 o'clock in the morning or not, it all felt and smelled very similar.
Yeah. So going from where it started to where it is now, I'm interested to know, obviously a lot can happen, and I can think of a couple things that it would have been a big challenge, but what would you say has been one of the biggest challenges you guys have faced in building Kiln?
Well, there was a pandemic in the middle. When you're building a face-to-face social collection of people and community, when people say to you, you can't sit next to each other, that's a problem. But it wasn't as big a problem as it perhaps should have been, or maybe hindsight's or time has diluted the issue.
Yeah, it was a huge test.
It wasn't
for our
cool.
business.
No, I do live in London, and I couldn't travel for at least a year.
It was about a year there.
It was really painful. We actually, one thing we did learn then was how to work virtually. Prior to that, if you think about it, nobody used the likes of Zoom, Google Meets, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we created a cadence of communication through that period that we still use today. Everybody uses today.
Yeah, I think in the long run, the pandemic will be very good for our business and for the future of hybrid work. It accelerated what was already a trend. It was heading in that direction, but it was like we skipped 5 or 10 years and just went straight to it. And I think that it's a good thing long run for our business, but in the short term, it was definitely a challenge. The one thing I'll say is that it really tested the quality of our team. And in some cases, that meant that some people didn't pass the test. And then in other cases, the people that did have been incredibly important to the growth and success of the business so far. So
that's great.
So stronger community, stronger team potentially. Is there anything that
I think it's similar to anybody that goes through adversity of some kind, or any team or any family or whatever. If you can get through it, then you can oftentimes be stronger on the back end.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm.
And is there anything specifically that maybe you definitely pivoted on as you thought about your strategy in that moment, or anything that you were like, no, we're not changing this, I'm doubling down on this, even with this moment that we're in? Or
I think one of the things that at that point happened was, as we were coming out the other side, we realized how relevant we were. Not that we didn't think we were in the first place, but we certainly accelerated our kind of thinking in terms of, we firmly believed that people needed to work in the way that people do work in Kiln, and other people started to realize it, that hybrid work situation, people traveling in for hours, for meetings, for events, to get together as a team, and the fact that there wasn't a necessity to have a great big HQ for your business. And that people could be a bit more transient in how they were, and also people not living in city centres and working out of perhaps away from that, and not too far from home. And we've always seen this. We've always knew that was the way it was going to happen. But everyone around us was seeing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting.
How about? I was going to ask about vision. So just remind us. I know we've talked about co-working spaces and community. Just tell us again what your vision is for why Kiln exists, and and maybe, you know, some of the challenges you're facing right now to make that happen?
Our vision is to elevate the quality of life while people are at work through an ecosystem of people, products, spaces, and places. There's more to that. I think there's more layers to that, but I'll just talk to a few of those quick points. People oftentimes use the term work-life balance, and we don't really believe in those two things being separate, work and life. We just know people are living, whether they're at work or whether they're in the mountains or whether they're on a bike or whether they're at home. And we want to make sure that for each individual that's coming to Kiln, the quality of their life while at work is enhanced. The second part to that is that we recognize that there's a variety of resources and solutions that can be developed for companies to be able to improve productivity, well-being, team culture, financial risk and outcomes that we are solving. You know, companies that come to Kiln, they can be on flexible terms, and they don't have to dump a bunch of capital into a new space that they're not sure if they're going to need that space in a few years' time. They can scale up or scale down. There's some real great things to the flexibility, but the most important thing I could basically say is that on average, a company is going to save 3 to 5% on the total HR spend by being at Kiln versus being in a traditional office space. Now, there was a recent research piece of research that was published and then reviewed with a guy named Nicholas Bloom, who's a professor at Stanford. And his data shows that companies that are fully remote, meaning they don't have an office, can be, not always, but can be as much as 30% less productive than hybrid teams. And by hybrid, he means those that are in the office 2 to 3 days a week. At least in most cases, it's going to be 3 days a week in the office. And that the employees that work in a hybrid model consider the benefits of being in that hybrid model equal to about 10% of their pay. So you're both improving productivity and you're reducing cost by being in an optimized hybrid model. And Kiln really provides the optimal solution for hybrid teams.
And does that include, I didn't intend to ask this question, but so you clearly have lots of small teams, 1 or 2 people. You have entrepreneurs, startups, and they grow to become unicorns. But how about the big companies? And I'll throw out like Microsoft and Google and Caterpillar. Is Kiln a place for them as well?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have Caterpillar and we have HP. We do have a Microsoft-owned company or backed company called Go1. And we've had 1 or 2 Apple employees along the way. But yeah, the answer is that the dynamics really come down to the individual and what the individual is experiencing. And so whether you're a group of 5,000 individuals or you're a group of 1 individual, that experience is still important, even at just the solo individual level as well as at the team level.
Yeah, I think in terms of the different, say, brands who come in and work with us or work in our spaces, it's changing. Like everything changes, and one of the amazing things about Kiln is the fact that it's called Flex Office for a reason, not just because there's a multiple reason, but we flex, we change all the time. We change our model, we change how we work, how we market, and how our spaces behave. And we are seeing bigger corporate clients coming into Kiln now, bigger teams coming into work in our spaces, which is great. It's been great. It is great having startup people into the space. There's a dynamic there, and there's a fresh dynamic with corporates coming in. There's a big change in the way people work, as we discussed earlier, in terms of the hybrid model, and seeing people coming in for shorter periods of the week and leaving is great. We just like to keep the space busy and full and active.
That's great. No, at some point we'll talk about community before we wrap up. What are the questions you have?
I'm interested, we talked about this a little bit at the send-off, so personally I've had a lot of really interesting moments, being in Kiln, one of which I didn't talk about when we were at the send-off, but we were all four in a meeting, and you talk about collisions, like one of my best friends since I was in kindergarten.
I remember that.
Yeah. Like, I thought he was in China. He was living in China with his family, and all of a sudden he just walks across the glass, and I see him, and I'm like, I have to step out. But I mean, I later found out he works at a company, located within Kiln Lehigh, and I mean, there are so many of those interesting moments, whether they be collisions or important moments in my life that happened at a kiln, and I'm wondering, for you guys, like, what has been one of the more memorable moments, I guess, that you've had at Kiln, or one of the most interesting collisions? I think would be cool to hear from you.
It's a bit difficult for me because I do live in central London, but
yeah,
genuinely, there's one of the local interior design college. The head of that college was at college with my best mate back in London. So they even exist everywhere. But I think the essence of all that is that when you put a lot of people together, eventually they're going to hit somebody they know. And if you're working from home, if you're working in a small office, you've got less chance of that happening. There's probably some statistics or maths related to kind of how many people you meet in a day, and our job is to make sure people meet each other.
I'll answer that by telling you a small secret, which is that just like any entrepreneur, there are ups and downs in this business, and when I experience a down, I have a pretty reliable way to get back up again. And that is, I simply walk around Kiln and I ask people about their experience. Now, not every case will somebody tell me it's all peachy keen and that they love everything. Oftentimes they'll tell me something that they care about that they wish was a little better. But I can always tell that they're expressing it from the standpoint of like, I love this place and I just want to see it continue to improve. But I've had so many collisions. And last night I was on an airplane. This is a true story. I was on an airplane last night, flying back from Boise, and I saw a gentleman and I recognized his face, and I said, "I'm so sorry. I don't remember your name, but I do recognize your face." And he's like, I'm so-and-so. I said, "Oh, I don't recognize your name either." But he said, "So what do you do?" I said, "I work at a place called Kiln." He's like, "Oh, I love Kiln. I'm there all the time. This is an older gentleman, probably 65 at least. I'm there all the time. He's an angel investor." And so I have seen him around Kiln and working with companies that we have at Kiln. And that was just on the airplane last night. So that happens to me a lot, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I had one yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah. British guy. I mean, I wish there was a way of connecting people quicker. But like this British guy, he listened to a podcast of Brett on the first season. He said, "That's my uncle. He's just got seed funding for 1.4 million, and he's above us in Kiln Lehigh."
Amazing.
So, but these collisions are great. Would you agree then? Like, I mean, basically the Kiln community is all about collisions of people, of knowledge, of information, of opportunities. Like that's what your community is all about. And
I would say sometimes we use the word community. If we were an iPhone and we were to call and somebody asked like, what does this iPhone do? Why is it so great? And you said software. Well, it's got great software. This iPhone has great software on it. And you were like, well, but what does the software do? Well, it's really good software. The community is similar. A similar term. The fact of the matter is the community is like the software, but it's not the apps. So the apps could be a collision, but it could also be a lot of other different things that we do. So to answer your question, it's not everything that we're about, but it's definitely threaded through everything that we're about. I guess I guess maybe that when you said it didn't fully resonate with me. And so
yeah, it's a tricky one. Community is used a lot. I mean, I guess we think about humans more and more now, about how people are, what people really need, and that connectivity and you know what they eat, what they drink, how they behave, how comfortable they are, and all those things. It starts there, and then it's how they start interacting with each other. And it's like a design principle in a way, and that's kind of how we think about the design when we design the space. But it permeates through all the operational elements and everything in the business. Really kind of focusing on the human and the human condition to kind of make that happen.
The one thing I'll say is a lot of co-working brands use the word community as if they've nailed it. They've got it down. If you come to this location, you're absolutely going to have a community. I don't know if that's the experience that every individual has. And in a lot of cases, if you just look at the physical design of a co-working environment, you can tell if they've genuinely prioritized community or they haven't.
It's not for everyone. I was thinking about this the other day, and I think we might have bumped into each other and talking about it in the corridor. To be engaged fully in a Kiln community is not for everyone. It's for a certain proportion of the membership, and that's okay because that's what people are like. Some people are very gregarious and like to be involved in other people's lives constantly, and others like a nice quiet corner, and we enable that to happen.
But even that quiet person might enjoy walking by a buzzy cafe, or feeling the energy of other people around them.
You do feel the energy of other people around you, and that's really true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I noticed, and I know we need to wrap up now. I mean, every kiln has a theatre, which is, I suspect, is part of your secret sauce, right? That's part of the community, to have a place to gather and meet. But there are so many great people we met across sites, which I have never known before, right? It was like, oh, there's this person here with that expertise and this person who's trying to set up a business. And I think that the interconnectivity between your kilns as they grow so quickly, I think that's going to be exciting.
Could be very exciting.
Do, to connect those opportunities, those relationships, whatever they might be, over time. So I'm excited to see what you end up building, what it looks like when there's 100 kilns.
Exactly.
And one community over all of
because the members are on a similar journey, and that those 100 kilns with exponential number of members, they're on the same journey. So there's a connectivity there, just basically on that, which I think is really fascinating, and I think it's something I'm really excited about exploring over the next few years to see where that takes us. I guess you could call it data, which is not a word I like to use, but there's some data there that could really help people in the working environment that we have access to.
Yeah, insights, really rich insights that can make some magic happen, right? It already happens actually really well. Just imagine what it could do, whatever 5 years from now, what you end up, doing. So we've run out of time, but do we need to ask some killer questions, don't we?
Yeah.
Some ending ones.
Could I just ask one other question before we get to that last question?
You may.
So what is some of your design inspiration, if you don't mind me asking?
It's always about communication, talking to the people you're working with. Always starts there. With Kiln in particular, we took the space in the gateway, which was an old play center place, and it had concrete ceilings, concrete floor, and we were looking at how we could perhaps balance that to give it a kind of lightness and residential feel, but also retain a working sense. And this kind of Scandinavian industrial kind of look kind of came out of that, and it really resonated with people. It's inclusive to all types. We have straight out of school, young startups, right all the way through to seasoned, larger companies, and very wealthy kind of funds come in and work, and they're all comfortable. Everybody's comfortable in Kiln, and it's I'm really proud of that fact, and the fact that we managed to nail that collectively together and really get that pitch spot on early on really gave us a strong advantage in the marketplace.
So that design and aesthetic, that was embedded straight from the beginning.
It was.
I think the story is much more rich than what Leigh just told, in that I would say if you knew Leigh's true story, you'd see how it manifests itself in his design. For example, we're sitting in a little cabin right now that's all authentic wood and it's made out of steel. And Leigh's father and grandfather both knew how to work with wood, right?
Yeah.
And Leigh grew up in a coal mining town, not fancy London. I'm grateful that Leigh is not a traditional, like, ultra modern designer where you have to have lots of, monotone or monochromatic colors. And it feels very impersonal, I guess you'd say. Like, I've always felt that our designs feel inspiring, but also comforting.
There's a warmth.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a soul in there.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it comes from the fact that Leigh's story is actually really interesting, and it's not traditional, and it comes from working class people, and then also from top-notch design in London. So it's sort of the meeting of those two worlds.
Sounds good.
It did sound very good, and it's true.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
So those last two questions, we asked every single person this one question we'll ask you now, which is, what do you think, Arian, first, it takes to create something that never existed before?
I think it takes a very clear sense of purpose and a very, very clear understanding that you are the one that's supposed to do it. I don't think Leigh or I have ever questioned whether or not we should be doing what we're doing, or whether or not we can do it in a world-class way. I think we've felt a lot of frustration at times that we haven't been able to do it even better. But I don't think we've ever questioned if we're the right people to go after it.
Interesting. Very good. Thank you.
I guess I agree with that, but I'd expand on it I think it has to be the right place at the right time. There are moments in your life where collisions happen. And Arian and I had a collision, and lots of other things in our worlds changed. And to be at that point in that vortex at the right time created something. I think that's kind of what we're trying to do within Kiln with our membership, is create those collisions that create those vortices that kind of make things happen. But it happened for us, and it was a really important moment.
That's great. Anything else?
Is that the last one?
Well, I'm tempted to ask it. I never asked this to anyone. I wish I had. But what does it take then? You've created something, and you've actually created something that isn't. I mean, on year one, you'd already created something that didn't exist before. But then you had to create a movement. I mean, you had to create something that actually lasts and grows. Is there anything else you hadn't commented on there for what it takes to create something that lasts, what we've been calling a movement? A kiln movement, whatever else. What else does it take?
Before we get into the rest of the episode, we want to thank the partners and sponsors who made the Kiln Road Trip possible. The Kiln Road Trip is brought to you by Kiln. Kiln is a boutique co-working and flex office community with 13 locations in 6 states across the West, dedicated to providing innovative workspaces that empower your team to thrive. Whether you're a solo visionary or an enterprise-level team of up to 100, Kiln transcends being merely a place to work. It's a hub for learning and connecting with like-minded professionals that will make you and your team love where you work.
And if you haven't stepped foot inside a kiln yet, you really need to. On this road trip, we visited every single location, and trust us when we say once you see these beautifully designed spaces, meet the talented team, and connect with fellow members, you won't want to work anywhere else.
Locations include Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, California, and Arizona. And they're growing too, with multiple locations set to open in 2024.
Yeah, so be sure to check out the kiln locations nearest you by booking a tour at Kiln.com and answer Swell in the question, how did you hear about us? Once you complete the tour, you'll be entered into a competition where you could win a 1-year membership, their club membership at Kiln.
Yep, you heard that. That's Kiln.com, book a tour, and be sure to mention Swell in the question, how did you hear about us?
The Kiln Road Trip is also brought to you by Moterra Campervans, a luxury campervan rental company for iconic road trips. Their top-of-the-line vans are available at 7 locations located near America's best outdoor adventure destinations. They have consistently earned the highest customer ratings in the industry, making Moterra campervans your gateway to adventure without sacrificing on comfort or service.
That's true, and initially we wanted to take this journey in a 1960s VW bus, but thankfully we found Moterra instead. With 3 van options, we took the Pop Top Classic, which sleeps 4 and is best for those who want to maximize floor space and storage. This was critical for us because it needed to sleep the entire crew, we needed space to edit, and we were traveling with large amounts of equipment, luggage, and other goodies that we picked up along the way.
And this van took us through all 3,580 miles of the trip. Super comfortable and sweet to drive.
And actually, Moterra offers fully planned itineraries if you'd rather leave the planning to someone else.
Visit gomoterra.com/swell. That's gomoterra.com/swell.
This episode is also brought to you by Taurus. Taurus is leading the charge in home energy storage. Taurus makes it easy to achieve energy independence and a greener tomorrow. The Taurus station provides everything you need to generate clean power, efficiently store electricity, and easily manage your energy use.
And installing a Taurus station offers plenty of benefits, including save money on your electricity bill,
Also, ensure energy security with backup power during outages.
reduce carbon emissions with renewables,
You can also automate EV charging and HVAC systems with 100% renewables.
and enjoy unrivaled system monitoring and support.
If you like the sound of those benefits, get a quote to build your Taurus station in less than 30 seconds. Super easy at taurus.co. That's TORUS.co. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Well, I think what's really great about Kiln is that we're not doing it on our own.
Mm-hmm.
We have a big team for ourselves, but we also have a massive membership. We can't let them down. We're on this. We've got momentum, and that momentum through all the people that are attached and involved in it. It's quite a significant kind of responsibility to house, for in the workday, so many people.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very different than, let's say, when you develop a piece of software. Most of the time, you don't get to sit with the person who is actually using your software and be able to see or experience with them what they're experiencing when they're using your product. In our case, we get to do that every day.
Yeah, we have to look them in the eye.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
And bump
So,
into them, getting some snacks or something like that.
I think that's had a profound effect on the way that we do things, because there's constant accountability.
So that,
both ways.
In the product world, it's observation, it's customer research, it's you're seeing it, you're having conversations all the time.
Yeah.
With your actual members or customers.
Yeah, we work at Kiln. We are alongside our members every day. I do remember I went to visit the CEO and founder of a very large co-working brand, and he had his own giant suite. It was completely different than the product that his customer was experiencing. And, we have, as our company has grown, so has our needs. So our space is we have a studio, which a lot of our corporations or bigger companies have. But, we have the same Kiln experience as a lot of our members are having. I think that's important to understanding if we're really building an authentic and good product.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, we didn't do that challenge that you gave us.
Yeah, well, I just want to ask you one question before we end.
Yes.
Yeah.
You two are the only people that I know of who have actually been on a trip to every location. Leigh and I have been to every location, but we are some of the only two within our company. Just as a side note, a lot of our team have never been to all of the locations. So what do you think is your big takeaway? Like, what did you learn that you did not expect about Kiln?
Yeah. So for me, it took a couple days to process because a lot of interviews back to back, meeting a lot of different people, experiencing all these different places in such a condensed time frame. It was hard for me to really process. And I think in the moment I thought I had a couple thoughts, but it's so interesting. And maybe it sounds very cliche, but I guess a bit of backstory. I've been working at home since I met Spencer. working virtually, and I never thought I would ever need to change. I was very content being in my corner, you know, existing in that spot, and I had built up my work around me to the point where I could keep doing that. And it's not to say that I wasn't going out and meeting with people and being around people, but there was just something different. Like I felt something deep down when I got back, and I really started to think about like, what is it that I'm really taking away from this? And it was that I think that to some extent, maybe I felt a little bit lonely, and it was like this strong realization that I really need to get out there, and I really need to kind of strengthen the community that I'm already a part of. So be more active in that participation. But in addition to that, then continue to build community. But it was really the strengthening part, because like I'm the kind of person who will leave a text on unread for I don't know however long, like from a sister or a family member. But I felt this strong need to strengthen the community around me. But I will also just, you know, reiterate something I said before. It was so interesting that I could go from, you know, whether it was in Utah or Boulder, Idaho, Portland, and then down to Southern California, just stepping in, it felt familiar. It felt, you know, it just felt like we never really left a spot. But then what was so interesting is then we started to meet all the different people, and, you know, we got some of the weird in Portland, you know, we got a little taste of what each of those different places had to bring and infuse into what Kiln is. And it really felt like they were coming together to make something new. So, but for me, yeah, a strong feeling of strengthening the community that I'm already a part of is what I took away.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with all those comments. Maybe I'll add, I mean, I think I felt like everyone was really behind the vision of what they were trying to create. Like they knew how special it is that they've got this opportunity to build something like Kiln, and just their desire to do that. That was really interesting. I think another insight is they were different as well. So some members, as they talked about their experience at Kiln, were literally naming their team by name. And others weren't, but they were talking about other things that were working. So you've kind of got, you know, not every team and every community is exactly the same, and it probably shouldn't be. They should be distinct. They should have their differences, and then as a whole, they're greater as a whole. I think there's a feeling of belonging that I liked. There was one. We did interview some people on the street, Venice Beach, not farmer, sailor, which was a really great interview. But one of them was an 18-year-old, works at Mr. Charles. I think that's a takeoff of McDonald's, but it's vegan. Anyhow, he runs a screen printing company, 18 years old, and his term was his brand is don't overlook the community. And I think that I got two things from that interview itself, and from Kiln, is that it has this great community, and it's only scratching the surface of what it's going to be as well. And yeah, don't overlook it. And Kiln isn't overlooking it; it's building it, even just with that physical space of a theatre, but all the other things it's doing and going to do. It's not going to overlook the community, not just its Kiln community, but the broader kilns, you know, collectively, and their communities in their local vicinity. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but there's lots of learnings, believe me. I
think one other thing just to mention that I think we would both share the sentiment of is the team. Like there's no way we could have done this this journey without every single member of the team that kind of came together at all these different locations to help us out. Like in Idaho, obviously we're like halfway through the journey at that point. We had like 50 Polaroids, and I can't remember his name. I feel so bad. Nathan. So Nathan's running around the office in Meridian with all these different Polaroids, and he's trying to just get a picture of the Polaroid so we can digitize them, and we can then put them out and give them to people. And it was just, everybody was always so welcoming. They were so helpful and supportive, and I think they believed in what we were trying to do.
Yeah, they did. They caught the vision. Yeah. And 6:30 in the morning, you get a text saying, "Hey, what's your coffee order?"
Yeah.
You know,
it was crazy.
So there was obviously people thinking really carefully like that, and we took over an office from a member. You've got a director that rang a customer and said, I mean, I was surprised, but anyway, she said, we're going to take over your entire office today because it was just perfect for the filming.
Oh yeah.
And it was Kate. I don't know if you know Caitlin or Kate, but she partners with Kiln doing social media. But anyhow, yeah, that was it. We literally moved her office around, and so that to me that was a demonstration of community broader than just your day-to-day job.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. This is the officially longest interview we did. We wouldn't have got to 100 if we'd done this. Yeah. There's two of you, and So thank you very much. Anything else you want to add, or?
No, thank you, and I'm so glad that you had a wonderful Kiln Road Trip.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Kiln Road Trip. Be sure to follow along on the rest of the journey, and you can do that in two ways. One, subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or maybe even watching on YouTube, and follow along on all of our social media platforms, whether you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok, @the Swell Pod. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.